Hello again and welcome to Forum for a Better Understanding. If you've ever watched this program, you know that we really do enjoy a panel of three people. But sometimes there's one person that can really cover for three because he's that good or she's that good. We have actually Rabbi Rich Winer, who, as you may remember, is the new rabbi at Temple Beth Israel, the Reformed synagogue here in Fresno. And we'd like Rabbi to help us talk about Jewish-Christian relations since the Vatican Council. Now, he's way too young to have been, knowing much about that time. But what it is his training and his ministry is obviously in the post-Vatican II moment. And we'd like Rabbi to share how perhaps it's different and the Catholic-Jewish connection, how it's been for him over the years. So, Rabbi, could you begin by maybe just telling us in your formation as a rabbi, if Christian-Jewish relations factored in positively, and if you see any connection with perhaps the Vatican Council had something to do with the way rabbis are trained compared to 70 years ago before the Council?
That's a lot to chew on.
A lot to cover in 3 minutes.
Yes, I did grow up post-Vatican II. I was actually born the same year as Vatican II, so we kind of grew up together. And I grew up in the East Bay up in Northern California, which is a rather liberal area religiously. People enjoyed being together, getting together. And my memories were always that my rabbi, who I modeled after to a great extent, Rabbi Shelley Waldenberg up there, was actively involved all the time. One of his closest friends was a minister in the next town over. I knew that Rabbi Waldenberg was always on Christmas Day serving in the soup kitchen. And so our community would commonly take turns relieving the Christian workers so that they could enjoy being with their family on their holy days, which were not our holy days. Nice. So it was kind of a given. It was just what we did. And I knew that, if and when I eventually became a rabbi, I would want to follow up the opportunity to get to know interfaith clergy.
It's wonderful in your short tenure so far here in Fresno how well you've landed, how much you've been able to do. You've been already, this is your third forum program. You've been at many, many of the interfaith events. You have sung with your chorale from Temple Beth Israel. It's been a wonderful, wonderful connection again with Temple Beth Israel and the interfaith community. Now, what I'd like to do is show you someone that you're going to say, I know his daughter. Well, let's begin with a clip that we played a while back here on Channel 49. It comes from Religion and Ethics, which is one of our very good programs that we air. We're going to be showing you a clip when Rabbi James Rudin, a very prominent rabbi in this country, is going to be sharing his own conviction about Jewish-Christian relations, his own commitment, and you'll see him in relationship with the popes, in relationship with Christian groups. Let's play that clip and have Rabbi perhaps share his own insights into the topic.
We have a profile now of a man who's spent most of his life working for better relations between Christians and Jews. He's Rabbi James Rudin, for many years until his retirement, the head of interreligious affairs for the American Jewish Committee. Rudin has a new book out called Christians and Jews, Faith to Faith. One reason he wrote it, he says, is his fear that the cause he has served so long is losing momentum. We met Rudin at a retreat center near his home in Florida. Once he promoted better interreligious understanding with top U.S. and foreign leaders. He had 11 meetings with Pope John Paul II and then with Benedict XVI. Rudin may be retired officially, but he's still busy writing, speaking, and leading interfaith meetings, this one of Catholics and Jews.
Is it possible to be a faithful Catholic and a faithful Jew, very deep in your soul, in your heart, and still have mutual respect and understanding for the other, capital O, the other, who is not of our faith?
Rudin says the Nazi Holocaust of the 1930s and 40s taught his generation what can happen when bigotry goes unchecked.
To me, it's a pathology. It's a cancer. That is anti-Semitism, or any religious hatred. And if you don't treat it, and you don't treat it as a pathology, it can fester and can be quiet for a while, and then it explodes.
Pope John Paul II, along with many others, led the post-war attack on religious prejudice, especially on anti-Semitism. In the year 2000, John Paul prayed at the Western Wall in Jerusalem, Judaism's holiest site. The note he left asked God's forgiveness for all those who had caused Jews to suffer. I asked Rudin if he blames Christians for the Holocaust.
I don't hold today's Christians guilty, not at all. Most of them were born after 45, but there's a responsibility to teach it to young Christians growing up today. In Christian Europe, in a Christian society, mass murder took place of a religious community. And how did that happen?
In churches, synagogues, and schools, often with carefully prepared courses and videos, dialogues explored the issues that separate the two religions. One of them, the words Old Testament.
It's not accurate because it puts Judaism as if it were something old-fashioned, not up-to-date, or, as many Christians believe, has been replaced by Christianity, and that the New Testament is superior to the Old Testament. And that's my beef with it.
And what about the understanding many Christians have that the Hebrew Bible foreshadows the coming of Christ?
I want Christians to take the Hebrew Bible, or it's called the Old Testament or the Tanakh, on its own terms. Do not imply that it was written 600 or 700 years before an event and was already predicting an event.
What then should evangelical Christians and others do about their conviction that the whole Bible is literally true, God's Word?
Well, that's not the way Jews and other Christians read the Bible.
And the ancient accusation that Jews killed Christ?
That's one of the most insidious and odious charges, and everybody knows, or everybody should know, that Jews under Roman occupation in the land of Israel at that time had no power to execute anybody.
Another issue, Jesus' great commission to his followers to make disciples of all nations.
Well, I respect that and I understand it, but Jews are already with the Father, already with God at the covenant, and are not in need of any intermediary.
And attitudes toward Israel. I asked Rudin whether he thinks some Jews are so supportive of the state of Israel that they can't criticize its government's policies.
There are many Jews who are very unhappy with the various policies of the Israeli government and have expressed it. However, there is one thing that the overwhelming number of Jews agree, that Israel must survive as a Jewish state.
Rudin says the best results from interfaith dialogue come when participants honestly identify their differences as well as common ground.
I've found after 40 years of this that Jews and Christians who really engage one another come out better Christians and better Jews.
Rudin preaches a theology that accepts the validity of all religions, all different approaches to the transcendent.
I really believe that God's plan for the human family is that there are many, many paths to God. And there's not just one path and one way and one truth. And that's the hardest thing for Christians and Jews to accept. They can accept neighbors, they can accept working together, marrying one another, they can do all kinds of things. But when push comes to shove, they'll say, my faith is the truth. Well, when you say my faith is the truth, you're excluding 98% of the rest of the world.
The interfaith group Rudin spoke to was the board of directors of the Center for Christian Jewish Studies at Florida's St. Leo University. Some of the members spoke of the progress they've seen.
I come back to my own childhood where my schoolmates would call me a dirty Jew. Now I have a beloved Catholic son-in-law, and we're sitting in this group. It's like day and night.
That's in one generation.
In one generation. Well, a long one.
Others emphasize their concern for the future.
My fear is that we peaked. Now, if I'm wrong on this, tell me. There's a lot of the folks that are engaged in our work are not necessarily going to be around the next 10 years. And the challenge for us is to how to bring folks who aren't 60 years old into this game, right?
Rabbi Rudin, too, sees work left to do and not enough younger people interested in doing it.
I think the initial enthusiasm, the first flush of excitement, Christians and Jews meeting together in America in dialogue or in Israel or Europe, that's over. And you have a whole new generation of Jews and Christians for whom all this either seems old-fashioned or unnecessary, or the job has been done. You know, there's nothing more to do. Maybe they think we've succeeded, but we haven't.
If younger generations feel better relations between Christians and Jews are no longer a top priority, surely one of the reasons is the great improvement in those relations that Rabbi Rudin helped bring about.
You know, Rabbi, there's just so much that James Rudin shared and Bob Abernathy with him. But is there one part you'd like to go back to just reiterate or to expound upon or even develop any concepts, ideas, or thoughts that Jim shared?
There is quite a bit, and toward the trail end of it, he speculated about whether today's generation thinks it's at all necessary. It's interesting because for me it's kind of a given that there's no difficulty, and yet we do see instances where there are. But it's not just a matter of the differences between Christians and Jews. Today, in today's world, there are differences between so many people all throughout the world that need to be addressed and in order to assure that great tragedies like the Holocaust do not happen again. In fact, I was watching the news this past week as one of our visionary leaders, another one, Rabbi David Saperstein, who is the head of the Religious Action Center in Washington, was arrested alongside of George Clooney of fame, demonstrating in front of the Sudanese embassy in order to make sure that human rights are being followed. So our endeavors to bring people together is not just a matter from one religion to another, but all throughout the world.
You know, we do have to take our break, unfortunately, but that just means we have another half of the program left, so please don't go far. Rabbi Rich Winer and I will be back in 1 minute. Stay tuned.
KNXT thanks all its loyal viewers and respected businesses who have supported your Catholic television station. Now you can support KNXT with program underwriting by having your name, your company's name, or organization associated with your favorite program. Detailed information about you or your company will appear before and after each program or day part you select. Keep the quality and spiritual message alive and make a difference. Call 559-488-7440 today or go online at knxt.tv to find out more about program underwriting on KNXT.
I'm back with Rabbi Winer, and it's really great to think we still have another 15 minutes or so to share with Rabbi local things of interest to us who are watching the program today. Rabbi, I'm going to just throw some words at you and have you kind of like give us an idea of the importance, relevance, or where you think we need to work with this. Anti-Semitism, is it still alive, or because the Vatican Council said we disavow it, did it ever go away?
Well, I'm guessing the intricacies of the Vatican Council are not terribly conscious in the mind of everyone out there today, especially those who aren't Catholic. So anti-Semitism is alive. It may not be what it was 50 years ago, but when I work with our teens today, for example, we ask them if they encounter things at all, and they do. It may not be pervasive, but it happens, and it's something that we do need to keep an eye on, as well as discrimination of any sort.
And we want to say that the Vatican Council and many documents of the Church after the Council have made it clear that there is no way that the Church in any way supports it. So that's very important. It took a long time. It was a minor statement, you might say, compared to what needed to be done. but rather than nothing, we are actually doing something, as they say now. The Holocaust. How important is it that we keep reminding ourselves, the whole world, and not just the Jewish world, of this phenomenon that is obviously partly rooted in Christian anti-Semitism?
It's a challenging topic for many reasons, and one that I believe cannot be allowed to sit on the shelf, because again, if it's only about what happened to us decades ago, it would still be worthy of memorializing, but we could leave it alone. But it's not. It's still going on. The anti-Semitism goes on, but people of all different ethnicities and religions are being wiped out for just who they are. And so one of the greatest lessons of the Holocaust is it can happen. It can happen to the Jews. It can happen to anyone. And so we have to be vigilant that any type of discrimination is blotted out, and that we really find ways to bring people together in meaningful, deep connections.
A deep connection that you made with the diocese recently was to teach in the new wine course. Can you tell us how important it was for you to even be invited? I'm really glad that it happened. How was it being the rabbi teaching Hebrew scripture to Christian students? How often do you do that? And how receptive were your students?
I take the opportunity whenever I have the chance, and it's another area where the rabbi who was my model growing up that's what he does today. He teaches throughout the Northern California Catholic community as a full-time thing. So it's a wonderful opportunity, and because my training early on through undergraduate work was religious studies, I enjoy very much learning about other religions and cultures, and so I like to bring to students an enjoyment of learning about for what them is the other, but it's what I'm used to.
Exactly. It was I have taught that course, but it is great to think they actually have someone able to share from his own faith commitment to that tradition, and not someone who lived in Israel for a year and can say a few things. It was wonderful knowing that they actually asked the rabbi to conduct the class. It makes all the sense, and you would wish that we would just do this more and more often.
Although I definitely encourage everyone to visit Israel, not just those of us who are Jewish. So your time in Israel is well worthwhile.
Well worthwhile, and we have people vouching for this. Father Mike Lesteri, who is on the course with me with Dr. Maldonado on the Gospel of Mark, spent a beautiful pilgrimage recently to Israel. Lisa Hendy, who does Catholic Mom, had a wonderful experience recently in Israel. And then there are many people who look forward to taking that trip. And that brings up the state of Israel. Rabbi, can you share how important it is, not only for Jews, but for all of us to appreciate the state of Israel in an understanding that is balanced and fair to all parties concerned? Can you share on the state of Israel, which is a very complex topic?
Within, say, a minute.
Only a minute.
Yeah, okay. It is a very challenging topic. I think one of the best ways to really understand how extremely challenging it is to understand that, here when we walk around Fresno and the greater California community, we see people who are my parents' or grandparents' age, and they've had their experiences. But in Israel, a great deal of those people are survivors of the Holocaust. Yeah. And in an area where they're surrounded by countries who have at one time or another said that we're going to wipe them off the map, we're asking them to compromise their security. People who lived through Auschwitz and the many other concentration camps, and they are now the grandparent generation of that community, they cannot simply walk away from security concerns. That makes it extremely complex, knowing at the same time that the majority of the Israeli populace is quite liberal and would like to figure out ways for equal rights for the non-Jewish citizens, while at the same time not losing the security of having it a protected Jewish state.
And what we want to say is the Catholic Church has been in a very difficult situation, trying to always respect the rights of the Palestinians and the right of the State of Israel, and therefore it's been also a touch-and-go relationship between Rome and Jerusalem, and we want to pray that in some way, perhaps this year, perhaps in our lifetime, there will be some better understanding of how this important right of the state is able to be just respected by the world entire, and not to have certain countries wishing that it weren't so and actually demanding that it be taken away. So we are appreciating the difficulty of the people of Israel and the people that live there with them. It's a very difficult situation, as if we're going to resolve it today. Another topic, Rabbi, that is very interesting that they brought up on the program. Do you think that in some way progress made has peaked, and that in a certain sense the efforts made years ago, the people involved in that are actually of an age, but there are not younger people feeling the need that we have towards deeper understanding of the differences between our faiths and the common bonds that bind us?
I think the flurry of activity that we saw when Rabbi Rudin was heavily engaged in this was big, and it was public, probably because it was such a new effort. Certainly, one of my predecessors, Rabbi Greenberg, was revolutionary in that here locally. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily peaked, it's evolved. For a lot of people, they look at it and they think, well, it's not something that's necessary anymore. But at the same time, there's a lot going on in other realms. So, for example, in the last month or so, I've seen a rise in electronic connections of people of vastly different characters. So on one of the major social media outlets on the web, there are now groups for, speaking of Israel, Israelis and their Arab neighbors. And they're developing for the mere purpose of getting to know each other better electronically. And within 24 hours of the development of this group on Facebook, they had tens of thousands of people signed up for it. So the interest is not only there, but to use today's terminology, it's gone viral.
Definitely. One thing that you did recently is attend the installation of our new Bishop, Armando Ochoa. Did you want to share just how it was being present at a ritual like that? And also, if there's any difficulty in a Jewish believer being in a setting that is, in a sense, so
Christian,
making points in its liturgy to its beliefs. I'm knowing it's easier for a non-Catholic to attend a Catholic liturgy. A Jewish person, a rabbi, some rabbis wouldn't attend. By profession, they would not do this. Tell us how it was for you and why you found it comfortable and wanted to be there for us.
It was an honor to be asked and to be a representative of the local Jewish community for this wonderful event for the diocese. I was glad to be able to be there. So for me, there was no hesitation whatsoever. And I wonder if it's not necessarily easier for me than it might be for some of the non-Catholic Christians. because for me it's just completely different. Within Christianity, you've got a difference of opinion of how to do your Christianity.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm Jewish, so it's all Christian to me. I understand the differences, and I study a lot about it, and I enjoy that, but it's not close enough that I have to worry about the differences. It's different. It's just completely different, and that's fine. Now, I was sitting next to in a row with other religious dignitaries, and I was on one side was a Unitarian representative, on another side was a Muslim representative, and down another seat or two was one of the Hindu community representatives, and we were all just sitting there going, well, it's completely foreign to us, but it's kind of neat.
You know, what's also neat is for Catholics to be spending time at a Shabbat. Do you want to maybe extend an invitation here on Friday evening to join at Temple Beth Israel?
Always, always. I have college classes that come in and high school classes that come in to observe. And the reminder that I always like to make is that we are non-proselytizing. So for people to come in and observe and participate with us, we are not trying to hook them in by any means. In fact, my tradition says that if someone wants to convert, I'm supposed to push them away 3 times before I'll even talk to them about it. So I'm not getting extra points for bringing people in. So it's always an open welcome for people to come and participate with us in a level that's comfortable for them.
I want to thank Rabbi Rich Winer once again for being a guest on the forum. I want to let you know that next week he'll be on again with another panel. And what we'll be sharing in that panel is a look backwards, many, many decades, to the wonderful Forum for a Better Understanding in its original form on the radio on KMJ, in which Rabbi Greenberg and Dean Malik and Monsignor Dowling shared around a table their common disagreements. And I think, Rabbi, it's going to be great for us to appreciate, though we like to agree and be agreeable, there are many things that in our religions are distinct and different, and those are the prickly things that we hope that are not going to be forgotten or diminished in our efforts to have true dialogue. True dialogue actually is a two-way street, and it demands conversation. Till next week, God bless.